class. So now that we have mastered the unit circle, it's time to start evaluating some trig values using that unit circle. Okay? So first off, let's find the values of trig functions by their quadrants. So in quadrant 1 here, the x values and y values are all positive, which means that sine of theta is positive, cosine of theta is positive, and if you divide those, tangent is positive. Let's go over to quadrant 2. Well, in this one, your x values are negative. Do you remember which function was your x value? Yeah, very good. That's cosine. So cosine is going to be negative, and sine, which is your y value, is positive because it's above the x-axis. So sine of theta is positive, cosine of theta is negative, and tangent is when you divide those. So when you divide a positive and a negative, you get a, very good, a negative. Quadrant 3. Now you're going to have your x's and y's are negative. So it's when sine of theta is negative and cosine of theta is negative. So what do you think tangent is? Did you say negative? Aw, you're so silly. Yeah, divide these. Negative divided by negative is, very good class, positive. And let's go into quadrant 4. This is when our y's are negative and our x's are positive. So we're going to have sine of theta is negative. We're going to have cosine of theta is positive. You divide those, tangent of theta is going to be negative. Okay, so if you notice, in the first quadrant, all are positive. Second quadrant, just sine is positive. The third quadrant, just tangent is positive. And the fourth quadrant, just cosine is positive. Okay, so all of them are positive. Sine is positive, tangent is positive, cosine is positive. All students take calculus. That is one way to remember it. Okay, all students take calculus. When I was learning about this, my Algebra 2 teacher, when we learned about which ones were positive, he was a farmer. So you know what he told us? All students tip cows. It's very mean, but I actually remember it from that. All students tip cows. That's offensive to you. You can just do all students take calculus. Alright. So let's start to evaluate these guys a little bit here. So let -3, 4 be a point on the terminal side of theta, and then we're going to find sine, cosine, and tangent. So I'm going to be over here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So this is -3, this is 4. How do you find the hypotenuse? Very good, Pythagorean theorem. And you should know this is a triple, so that's going to be a 5. And that's my theta value. So what's sine of theta here? It's going to be the opposite over hypotenuse, which is 4/5, which is positive, by the way. And it's in the second quadrant. You should know what's going to happen to cosine and tangent. Make sure it matches up everything. So cosine is -3/5 because it's adjacent over hypotenuse, and it is in fact negative. And tangent is going to be the opposite over adjacent, which is also going to turn out to be negative. I don't like that negative on the bottom, so I usually just pull it out in front. Okay. So let's go ahead and do number 2. I'm going to give you tangent, and we're going to know that cosine is positive, and we're going to find the rest of it. So where is cosine positive? In quadrants 1 and 4. It says right here tangent's negative. When is tangent negative? In quadrants 2 and 4. So where do these overlap? Very good, class. In quadrant 4. So we're going to draw our triangle in quadrant 4. So what is tangent? Well, it's going to be 5 and 4 because it's opposite over adjacent. And this 5 is indeed negative because we're going down. How do you find the hypotenuse? Well, you have to do the Pythagorean theorem, which is going to give you root 41. So let's go ahead and find sine. Sine of theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, which is negative 5 over root 41. And you can leave it like that, and I'm totally fine with that. Secant. Ruh-roh. Do you remember what secant is? It's the reciprocal of cosine. Well, if cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, then secant's going to be hypotenuse over adjacent. That is just lovely. Any questions? Okay, good, because I can't answer them because this is a video. Let's do another one. 3. Hey, try this one on your own. So, substitute teacher, whoever you are in the room, could you please pause the video until the students are ready for the answer? Okay, so I'm assuming that most of you have already gone through this problem. So let's do it. So sine here is positive, and this is going to be in quadrants 1 and 2. And this says that tangent is negative, which happens in quadrants 2 and 4, and these overlap in quadrant 2. Okay, so we're going to have opposite over hypotenuse, and we got to figure out this missing side, which is 3, and it's to the left, so it's negative. So we're going to get cosine of theta is going to be the adjacent over hypotenuse. And cosecant, by the way, is just the reciprocal of sine. You don't need to do any work to figure this one out because it's just that reciprocal. So it's actually going to be 5/4. Awesome job, everybody. Let's go on to reference angle. Okay, so reference angles are angles that, using standard position, where an acute angle is formed by the terminal side and the horizontal axes. Okay? So find the reference angle for the following. So 100 degrees is over here in quadrant 2. This is the reference angle because we always use the closest to the axes. So how many degrees is from here to here? Well, this would be 80 degrees. So our reference angle is 80 degrees. So if we have 260, 260 is somewhere down here. So we have to figure out what this theta value is right there. So, well, this helps out. If I know this is 180, how far away is 180 and 260? This is 80 degrees. So these have the same reference angles. They're just in different quadrants. Okay? So if we have negative 80, which is something like this, what is our reference angle? This one's a little bit simpler because we know we went down 80, so this reference angle has to be an 80. Isn't this so exciting? So go ahead and try these 3 on the bottom. Please pause the video and then resume it when the students are done. Okay, so we're going to have 300 degrees out here. I need to find theta. Since that's 300, by the way, this is 360 for a full rotation, and this is 300. How far away are those? Those are 60 degrees is going to be my reference angle. Okay. Negative 135. Okay, so I have negative 135 over here, and again, this is 180 over here. So how far away is that from 180, which is the same thing as negative 180, by the way. So how far away are negative 180 and negative 135 away from each other? They're 45 degrees away from each other. Ooh, I knew this was going to happen. So we're going to get 5, 5, or 6. This is where it's really helpful to know which quadrant it's in. This one is really 5/6 pi. Okay, so this is going to be pi over 2, this is pi, and this is 3 pi over 2, and this is 2 pi, or 0. So 5/6 is between here, or here, or here, or here. So which quadrant is it in? Very good. It's actually going to be here in the second quadrant, because it's between 1 and 1/2. 5/6 is between 1 and 1/2. So how many degrees is right here? Well, how far away are 5/6 pi and 1 pi? They're actually 1/6 pi away. I write this as pi over 6. So this is just a little bit of heavy math here, but you need to be fluent at this. Okay? If you don't know how to do this, you could just do pi minus 5 pi over 6. And this is really going to be 6 pi over 6 minus 5 pi over 6, which is pi over 6. Any questions? Again, good. It's a video. So there are 3 very, very special reference angles. Okay? So the pi over 6, the pi over 4, and the pi over 3. So we're going to start evaluating the actual values of these. So here we go. So let's go ahead and graph. Where is 4 pi over 3? Well, if you look, if it's an over 3, it's some multiple of a 60. Okay? If you want to convert it, it's actually going to be 240. So 240 is going to be over in this quadrant over here. Okay? My reference angle is 60 degrees. This is going to be the unit circle, so this is going to be a 1. Since this is a unit circle, this is going to be a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So right here is going to be my 30, and right here is my 90. For a 30, 60, 90, all you're going to do is the opposite of the 30 is going to be your half, because it's half the hypotenuse. And then this one is, the longer side is root 3 times whatever the shorter side is. So it's root 3 over 2. So from here, what's cosine? Well, cosine is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. Okay? So it's going to be 1/2 over 1. There's one thing I did ignore, though. I ignored the quadrant that we're in the direction. So what direction is 1/2? It's actually going to be negative, and this root 3 over 2 is actually negative because it's going down. So it's negative 1/2 over 1, which is equal to negative 1/2. What about tangent? Well, you have to know where to draw this. So negative 210 degrees, so it's going to come out over here. And then what's your reference angle here? Well, between negative 180, because we're going to talk about negatives, and that is going to be 30 degrees. So I'm going to have a reference angle of 30 degrees. Okay, again, this is 1. So opposite the 30 is the half. So I'm going to get a half here. And then the longer side, which is my 60, is going to be root 3 over 2. And this is going to be negative. So what's tangent? Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So it's going to be 1/2 over negative root 3 over 2. And you can just cancel out those 2. So you're going to get negative 1 over root 3. This is a perfectly acceptable answer, except they typically rationalize these for the special reference angles. So if you multiply the top and bottom by root 3, you're actually going to get an answer of root 3, negative root 3 over 3. So that is that one right there. So we have cosecant of 11 pi over 4, which means we're going to be talking about 45 degrees. We've got to figure out which one is the quadrant it's in, though. So this is actually, it took more than a whole cycle. So we got to figure this out. So if I actually take away 11 pi over 4 minus 8 pi over 4, because that's a whole cycle, I'm actually going to get cosecant of 3 pi over 4. which is in Quadrant 2. Okay? So this is a 45-degree one. These actually have to be the same values over here. So it's going to be root 2 over 2 and root 2 over 2. This will be negative because it's to the left. Okay, so here's our triangle. And again, this one is 45 degrees. So let's go ahead and do cosecant. Well, what is cosecant? Cosecant is the opposite of sine. So you gotta figure out what sine is. So sine is going to be root 2 over 2 over 1, which is root 2 over 2. So cosecant is when you flip that. So cosecant is going to be 2 over root 2. We typically, for these special reference angles, we rationalize them. So we're going to rationalize it. When I do that, I'm going to get 2 root 2 over 2, which equals root 2. Alright, sine of 120. Why don't you go ahead and try a sine of 120 on your own. Pause the video and play when you are ready. Okay, so for sine of 120, I'm going to have a reference angle here of 60, which means that this is my shorter side, so this is my 1/2. So sine is going to be root 3 over 2 all over 1, which is equal to just root 3 over 2. So if you notice, root 3 over 2 appears as an answer, 1/2 appears, negative 1/2, root 3 over 3, root 2. These are pretty common answers. Okay, go ahead and try 14 and 15 on your own. And then pause the video and hit play whenever you are ready. Okay, so for 5 pi over 3, this is actually going to be in the 4th quadrant. Okay. This reference angle is actually going to be a 60. And so this one is a 30. So if this is a 1, this is a 1/2, and this is a root 3 over 2, and this is a negative. Okay? And we know sine. So sine is just going to be the opposite over hypotenuse. So this is going to equal negative root 3 over 2. For cosecant, you're going to draw, this is going to be in quadrant 3. This is a 45, so it's going to be 1 root 2 over 2, root 2 over 2. You just need to memorize these two different triangles, and then you're pretty much good to go. You can always draw everything. So these are both negative, because it's in the 3rd quadrant. Cosecant, that is related to 1 over sine. So find what sine is, and then flip it over. So sine is going to be opposite over, so it's going to be negative root 2 over 2. So this is what sine is. So for cosecant, just flip that, and we actually did that already. We did that up here, same work, and you get root 2. Okay? You do need to memorize these. And then, real quick, sine of theta. There is no triangle to draw here, so this is 1. So sine is going to be the x and the y value, class. Very good. It's the y value. What's the y? What's the height right there? The height is 0. Let's do tangent. Tangent of 90. So this is going to be, this is the point 1, 0. And tangent, if you remember from a unit circle, should be sine over cosine. Sine of 90 over cosine of 90. Okay, so sine of 90 is 1, because it's your, I did this wrong, it should be 0, 1, by the way, and I just noticed that. Whoopsies. Okay, so sine is y, which is 1, and cosine is 0. Well, can you do that? 1 over 0? No, so that is does not exist. See if I can make this chart in 4 minutes. because the bell's about to ring for me. So here's what I do really, is I make a little bit of a chart. So sine of theta, cosine of theta, tangent of theta. And this helps me memorize everything. So I'm going to do pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, and I'm going to do a pi, and just kind of get the basic ones, or no, I'm going to do pi over 2 and do the basic ones. Okay? And there's a little bit of a pattern here. People say they like it. I don't know if they're just making it up or not. Okay. So to do these, for these first three right here, is these are all over 2. Okay. So sine is going to go 1, 2, 3. Cosine is going to go 3, 2, 1. The top is square root. So what's the square root of 1? Just 1, so I leave it. Square root of 2. Nothing to do there. Square root of 3. Square root of 3. Square root of 2. Square root of 1 is just 1. How do you do tangent? You divide sine over cosine. So you're going to get 1 over root 3, which is root 3 over 3. Divide these, you're going to get the same number, which is just 1. Divide these, you're going to get root 3. So this is all for quadrant 1, by the way. So if you know your reference angles, and you can get sine, cosine, and tangent all from this chart. The only thing we don't really give you is this quadrantal, so I'll just go ahead and go through and give you the quadrantal right here. So for the first one, for 90, I'm going to get sine is going to be 1, cosine is going to be 0, which means that tangent does not exist.